As gifted as Bob Ufer was with the spoken word, so is columnist Joe Falls with the written. Here, Joe articulates, when asked, his thoughts about the man.
And he was very sensitive to criticism. I remember one time there was a columnist here in Detroit who said he was driving across the Upper Peninsula and stumbled into the Michigan broadcast. He'd never heard Ufer, and he couldn't believe that somebody could yell so much and carry on so much, and it must have seemed very, very unprofessional to him, and I guess it was if he didn't know Bob, and he proceeded to write something that really took Bob's skin off, and he called me up, and he was in total despair, and I said, Bob, you got to understand a couple of things. One, if you're on the radio and you're before the public, these things will happen, and I guarantee to you, if this man listens enough and comes to know you, he'll change his mind.
For a man to have affected so many lives, there had to be something very special about him. For lack of a better word, it's called character. I went on to ask the president of the university, Robin Fleming, as to whether or not it was always smooth sailing.
Once in a while, I'd get a letter from somebody complaining about something he'd said, which, of course, I had nothing to do with. But the one I remember is that in his overexuberance at one point, when the Ohio State game was coming up, he compared Woody Hayes to Hitler.
Here it is, 4th down and 3. There is Gerald pitching off to Logan. Spring, he's hit. He goes out of bounds. Michigan takes over. The Wolverines have done it, I believe. And there's only one thing you for sure of now. Schembechler will stay on the ground, just like George Patton did when he won those victories over Adolf Hitler. Well, I tell you, old Bo, George Patton, Schembechler is going to stay on the ground now.
Well, that caused me to get several letters saying that this was outrageous to compare whatever we thought of Woody. It was outrageous to compare him to Hitler. So I wrote Bob a little note, and I said, I really think you went beyond the bounds here. I was at Vitale shortly after it was liberated, and there really isn't a reasonable comparison between Woody Hayes and Hitler. Well, I got a nice note back from him, but he said, well, maybe he'd gone a little far that day.
A man who certainly knows what the game is all about and what it takes to do the job. Here is Keith Jackson.
Well, I think his style was his, and I think that's terribly important for anybody in the public communications business, but particularly when they do what he did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember his enthusiasm for what he was doing, because you can't fake what Bob Ufer offered.
Yeah.
He loved his Michigan. He loved it in such a way that even a Buckeye would like it. It might be disguised as a growl, but they would like it. I thought he was very fortunate in finding his place, because he lived and laughed and loved in one community, basically, throughout his profession. And you're very fortunate if you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, I'm sure if you look back at it, you'd find that he agreed that it was a yellow brick road for him, too, because it's a very special thing when you're involved in the memories with affection of 4 generations of people. And I think Michigan will always be the better for it, because he proved that loyalty was a valuable thing, and loyalty would be a lasting thing. And I think probably some of the seeds that Bob Ufer sowed in his enthusiasm and his constant affection and his constant willingness to give of himself so generously all the time is one of the reasons that Michigan has been over 100,000 for years on end. It all adds up into one sum, I'm sure, and winning teams are obviously the ultimate bottom line. But having all of these kind of people about who make it seem important, and in time make it important. I mean, you can start with little, but if your enthusiasm is strong enough and your loyalty is strong enough and your willingness is constant, you'll eventually make it bigger and better.
Broadcasting the Michigan football games all season long, year after year, is a labor of love. But we do realize that we get carried away from time to time and say some real outlandish things during the heat of play-by-play. But you know something, football fans? If at any time in any broadcast I've ever said anything to offend anybody in any way, believe me, it was a slip of the tongue and not of the heart. I guess by now you know that Bob Ufer loves football, and I do love Michigan. And I would never intentionally say anything to hurt either one. A Rose Bowl-bound Michigan 22, Wash Bowl-bound Ohio State zip. And now as we move out of the broadcasting booth here at the Ohio State Stadium and join the rest of the 4,000 Wolverines